Okay, core audience for this video is going to be anybody at Netflix who will listen. Probably nobody. But with all the various fantasy shows from Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Wheel of Time, The Witcher, which is Netflix, destroyed that pretty much, Disney with Willow, and various other fantasy properties that have or are based on prior or other source material. With all those properties being destroyed, I figured it was a good time to remind Netflix, who is currently working on a Chronicles of Narnia adaptation, of what they should be focusing on, because so far everybody in Hollywood film industry has been focusing on a non-existent audience. So this is the concept of the core audience as it pertains specifically to the Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis's fantasy world. So I'm going to just make a little circle, and that is going to be the core, and we're just going to put those are people who are book fans. So that's a start right there. If you're wondering why I spelled core without the E, you're not in the core audience. Outside of that, we're going to have Narnia film fans. These are people who enjoyed either the 1970s BBC versions, which myself and my children still enjoy, as does my wife, and also the more recent and more tragic trilogy put out by Disney and Paramount. I say more tragic because after they left Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it became Narnia in name only on those movies. Okay. Next audience you should be trying to hit. This is where you get a fun little concept of overlap in fantasy, where some authors are associated with other authors. So, for instance, in this case, it's going to be Tolkien fans, because J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were both part of the Inklings Club. There's that. Tolkien fans. Both of them were part of the Inklings Club. Both of them were very close friends with each other. And so you have a lot of crossover between people who like Lord of the Rings and people who like Chronicles of Narnia. And we saw what the Tolkien fans did to Amazon's Rings of Power. Don't want to go down that route. You don't have a warehouse full of stuff to sell. So this crossover section it shows up with other fantasy authors. For instance, Brandon Sanderson. If you're a fan of Wheel of Time, then you'll probably also enjoy some Brandon Sanderson stuff. Or if you're a Brandon Sanderson film fan, vice versa, you'll enjoy Wheel of Time from Robert Jordan. But after the Tolkien fan, notice we've gotten 3 layers deep. We've gotten Tolkien fans, we've got Narnia film fans, and we've gotten the core book fans, people who like the books the way they are. After that, then you come to fantasy fans. People who just like to see A good fantasy put on film. Maybe they're Witcher fans, maybe Wheel of Time, Brandon Sanderson fans, Elric fans. They could be Game of Thrones fans, or Song of Ice and Fire. I think they'd be pedantic about that. But these are people in a broader sense, just like good fantasy stories, D&D fans and such, and they would love to see another fantasy world brought to life, preferably faithfully to the source material, because they will get upset by proxy if it's not. Now, outside of fantasy fans, this point you have finally branched out into the broader audience. What you have done is now you have switched mediums. So these core fandoms, from the books to the Narnia film fans to the Tolkien fans to the fantasy fans, are all based around either C.S. Lewis's stuff, Tolkien's stuff, and fantasy. Now you're switching to a general TV audience, people who just like to watch a good TV show. It doesn't have to be fantasy, it doesn't have to be action, although if you want to get specific, you could break it down into action, drama, all that. But these are just TV show or movie fans. So these are just the people. Their primary issue will be whether or not the show or film is well written. They're not going to be concerned with, is it entirely accurate to the books. Some of them might be, some of them might not be. But that's where you're starting to get further away. Outside of them, you have your general audience. General audience. So, shouldn't take me to tell you, the idea, the concept of the core audience is also the concept of the target audience. It forms a target. Now, is it true that more people fall in the general audience than fall into any of these rings? Yes. Here's the kicker. The closer you get to the middle of these rings, the more people you pull from every ring. The more faithful you are to the material that was beloved in the beginning, the more enthusiastic those people will be to go out to the next ring and tell them, and go out to the next ring and tell them, and those will go to the next ring and the next ring, all the way out into your general audience, and more people will come in to watch it. This is what happened with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Very well made. It did not stick to the books that well. So it actually would have fallen into the second circle, more so than in the book fan circle. However, they were incredibly well made, and they stayed true to the spirit of Tolkien's world. Therefore, they're considered the greatest trilogy of films ever made. Well, the extended versions, not the theatricals. Stick with the extended every time. But this is, let me bring it back up to you. This right here is what you should be going for, Netflix. Right? Aim it right there. Right there, that core audience. That's what you want. The closer you get to that, if you hit it right on the mark, given all of the garbage fantasy that we've been fed, from your own Witcher to Willow to Rings of Power to Wheel of Time to all the Star Wars stuff that's come out, if you stay true, if it's a TV show or movies, whichever you're doing for this Chronicles of Narnia, if you stay true to the books, you break the mold of current Hollywood trends, stay true to those, and I know it's antithetical to everything you believe because it's biblical allegory, and we know how Hollywood feels about the Bible. But if you actually stay true to the books, draw first from them, and if you need to fill in gaps, go to the Bible for themes. If you need to fill in gaps visually, go to old fairy tales like George MacDonald's Fantasties. Beautiful fairy tales in there. That was the book series that inspired C.S. Lewis to begin with, to write his Chronicles of Narnia. Please, whatever you do, do not try to adapt that one. Just leave it alone. Thank you. But, well, that's all about it. That's about it. Have a good one.